Welcome to the Totally Awesome Fishing Show. I'm a great one for trying a little bit of experimental fishing, and I've recently been doing something called high stack fishing. Now, beach fishing, you always put your rods up high. I thought, why don't we do that when we're freshwater fishing? Wonder where I could go to try it out. And the place I'm going to try that technique is Hawcott Fishery in Gloucestershire. And this is where I came up with the idea way back in the summer of using rods up high. It's a great fishery, good mixed fishing here. It's been a bit of a terror of a morning for wind and rain. I'm going to give it a go, hopefully I can pick a fish off. Let's get down to the swim. I've already put some bait in. Fingers crossed we catch something for you guys, but more important, let's take a look at that technique. Right, now here's how the technique came about. I was down here making a tench film, and during the night the swans came in about 150 yards out, started digging in the weed, pulling all the weed up. Fine, it's a nice still night, no problem at all. But then just before dawn I thought, what's all that all over the surface in front of my rods? And I was getting those single beeps, you know, beep, beep, where there's normally a piece of weed on the end of the rod top where the line goes into the water. Annoying to say the least, because that's when the fish were going to come on the feed. What had happened, all that weed had drifted close in, just been, not even on the wind it wasn't, it was just on the air drift, it just pushed it all across and it sat right in front of my swim. Great, really pleased. Anyway, I thought, how can I get around this? Because I put a lot of bait in, I sat there all night fishing, wide awake in a chair, no bivvy for me. I thought, I've got to get out there with some feeder. What I wanted to do was keep my rod top high, so I thought I'm going to raise the rod top. This was the regular Avon rod. Put the rod high, back the drag off a bit, put the reel on back one, but still use the buzzer. It worked a dream. I caught tench after tench after tench. And I think I could improve on that by using the Avon rods, but with the quiver tip section. Now, a quiver tip, in case those people don't know, is a very, very fine hair-like, well, mostly it's fiberglass. I don't think it's carbon. Carbon's generally stiffer and the fiberglass is generally softer. It's normally a thin sliver of fiberglass with tiny little rings on it, and it's used as bite indication, but most people fish it down low to the water, often sideways, you know, to the water level. They rarely fish it really up high like you would do beach fishing. Anyway, that's what I've worked out. I'll show you the system I've got, and you know, we can only try because I just know in my heart it's going to be a method to use, maybe for the future. Okay, the first thing you need are a couple of nice big long extending bank sticks. No good with one of those rod pods, because even if you reversed it, you know they're on a slope, you think, well, I'll put it around the other way, like the cart guys used to have their rods, used to be a bit of a fashion thing, have your rods slightly raised like this. No, I'm not talking slightly raised, I'm talking whacked up in the sky like a telegraph pole. So you want extended ones there, and then up the top here you still use your buzzers, but you have to put it back at an angle. Now the reason for that being, generally this rod, if I can raise it, I don't know, would be lying, well, it would lay dead flat like that in the rings, and you get your bite as per normal. But if you put that up at a high angle like this, sometimes the line misses the little pulley wheel and paddle that's down in here, and you don't get the audible beep. This method I'm trying to do audible, you know, and visual. Instead of having your bank sticks up here vertical, you want to, well, you don't bend them back, you put them in at an angle, so you're trying to get almost, I can even bring those back a bit more, almost a right angle just here where the line goes on to that little pulley wheel. As you can see, then you'll get your bite buzzing audibly. Same with the other one. You'll notice, obviously folks, I'm using odd buzzers because I can't afford to buy a matching pair. They still buzz or beep or indicate. I call them buzzers, my son calls them indicators, Dad. They're called indicators. I said, but what noise does it make? It doesn't make an indicator noise, it makes a buzzer noise. Okay, that's the buzzer setup. Sorry, indicator setup. Now you'd think with the rods up high like that on the rest, they'd just pull over and you'll lose the rod and reel. Well, obviously you would if a big carp got hold of it. We're talking tench here, however they could still pull it over. But what you do is, you back the drag off, but more important, you put the reel on back wind. That means you take the anti-reverse off, which stops the handle going backwards. Now, that gives you twofold. You've got two safety backups there. You've got the drag, which can give line, obviously, under pressure, and the back wind. You can also, if you wanted, put the drag to what we call regular fighting drag, as he was striking a fish, but definitely keep the reel on back wind, because as it pulls the rod top down, that handle at the bottom here is going to start turning around in what we used to call 40 years ago a churner. When we used to have the rods flat like this, you'd have them in a couple of rod rests, and you would always fish with back wind. You know, you'd have the anti-reverse off, definitely, because you would lose a rod and reel. People did. So you still hook the fish. It's almost like a bolt rig, if you can imagine. The reel is actually working like a bolt rig. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to ease the drags just a tad, and they're going to take the anti-reverse off so the reels can both back wind. And I'll give you another tip as well. Now then, I've got two reels here. As you can see, you can either have a front drag reel, which you can adjust for tension coming off, or you can have a stern drag with either a nut, or in this case it's an old-fashioned one. It's called I think it's called a fighting drag or something peculiar. But you can adjust that there, and you can adjust your drag on the back here, so it takes line. Okay. Normally, underneath the reels, they've got anti-reverse. You see, so the handles can't turn like this. You do not want to fish like that. You want them. See how they lock like this? You want them just so the handles can unwind. So when you get a take, the handle will turn like this and spin, and you can just grab the rod here, lift it up and strike. Same with this one. You'll get an indication audibly, and then away it goes, and then the fish won't pull the rod over because it's going to be back winding the reel. And that's how you do it. Now another tip is, this is a single handle. This one over here has a double handle. I don't particularly like the double handles, but they balance better because you don't want to pull the feeder out of position. You want the feeder to sink, just lay on the bottom, and then your bait lay pretty much on the top. Because it's so weedy, the last thing you want to do is move it. But what you will find in backwind situations is, I might be able to show you with this, just the weight of the handle alone here, look there, it's falling under its own weight. That could put too much tension on the quiver tip, or indeed too little tension. So you have to adjust it by the spool here. Just to make sure the reel handle is under its own weight at the bottom here, and then adjust the tension gently using the spool here to tighten up to your quiver tip, but not bowing it over too much. You want a little bit of tension there, but not too much. You want to allow that fish to pull the quiver tip over, but feel the minimum of tension. With the two handles, it's not so bad. Wherever you put it, whichever position you put it in, you can see it doesn't rotate under its own weight. So they're quite good for balancing for this particular type of fishing. A single handle reel will always want to drop like that, and that will put either too much or too little pressure onto that quiver tip. So that's how I've done it with the reel handles, and just tensioning those quiver tips so they're just a little bit of sort of slack in them, almost the weight of the fishing line itself has just put tension on it. That way you get a visual indication. You're not sitting down, well, not many people, it's only me that looks at bobbins, isn't it? Most people just go to sleep in a bivvy, wait for the alarm to go off, the buzzer, the indicator. I like to look at rods. I like to see, in fact, if I can see the rod go over, I don't think there's anything more exciting than seeing a rod fold over with a big fish on it, a barbel, a tench, a chub, a carp. It's visual, you see it, you grab it, you lift it and you strike into it. But don't forget, we're talking weedy situations here, guys. This is why I've got those rods up high, to minimise the line, you know, going into over the top of the weed. In that respect, when I cast out my feeder, I normally, on a clear bottom, would want to bump the feeder. So as the feeder lands like this, the hook bait and hook link comes down on top of it. But I like to bump the feeder about a foot, just to straighten it out. Let some feed come out from the feeder, and then the hook link is here, and the bait is right on a little trail up to the feeder. That's how I normally like to do it. This one I'm experimenting with is the feeder goes down. As soon as it hits the surface, I let it go bang, straight on the bottom, and I'm going to let that rest on the weed. If there is weed there, which I know there is weed, is the hook bait just comes down, the worm and the maggots just sit down. Another little tip, when you're baiting up, I like to get the worm on, but during daylight hours I like to put 3 or 4 maggots on there, purely as a target, like a little target for the tench to see. But I mean, carp guys know you can use a pop-up. It's also visual. It lifts it off the weed bed, but it also gives them something sort of white or pink or fluorescent to see, to locate. It might just catch their eye and they can swim over and take a look at it. They might take it, they might not. You're never going to know. Okay, for this little experiment, I'm using a mixture of ground bait here. For the feeder, for the swim feeder, it's an open end, just regular cage feeder. In there is the Bailey's #1 horse feed I use. No other additives, just some sweet corn, some dead frozen maggots, and some live red and white ones. That's the feeder. On the hook, I'm going to be using either red or white maggots. Now, I normally in the winter, autumn and winter, like red maggots for tench if there are any late season tench or mild spells. Or for this one, as I mentioned earlier, I'm going to use the white ones to tip the bait. And some dendrobina worms. So here's my rig, dead easy. Let's put the rod on the camera, it's extra rest. There it is, it's just a regular sliding swim feeder, but I don't use a stop shot or any form of rubber stop in here to stop the feeder sliding down to the hook. I use a regular barrel swivel because if I'm casting a long way, I don't want anything slipping. So the feeder comes up to the stop there, and here my hook link, listen, it can be any hook link if you're going for small fish, 3 pounds minimum I would say, something like that. If you're going for bigger fish, I just use the real line again, which is 6 pounds, about that long. There is, smooth that around there, my worm on the hook. I pull those old ones, this is just to show you an old one, and I hook it 2 or 3 times, just down from the head, in from the tail, just so you want a bit of movement there. You don't want to skewer it. I mean, if you go beach fishing, you do tend to thread the worm right up over the hook shank and pop it over the eye because you're casting hard. But you know, with fish in a lake or even a river, you want a bit of movement. So I'm just going to, because of the weed situation, tip it with white maggots because they might. Look, this is a bit of an experiment, guys. It's the truth of it. I'm just trying to show you a technique. If I catch a fish, brilliant. Just like that. So I've got the worm, got plenty of movement, front and back, but also got 3 maggots there. That's got the movement, but it's also white, so they might just see it. Any fish, could be perch, tench, chub, barbel, roach, whatever you're fishing for. With a feeder, get your feed here. Wow, it is windy. Who knows if we're going to catch anything today. Not the greatest conditions, but at least it's another technique for you. There's a feeder. Make sure it does slide. You're all ready to cast out. Now, gravel pits are great areas to fish, especially if you want some big tench. Now, I'm not really a specialist in big fish fishing. I just catch the odd big fish now and then, in amongst all the other stuff. But gravel pits can be very clear. Clear water means sunlight. Sunlight means in the summer, yes, plenty of weed growth. So it can be a problem locating your bait and the fish together. There's one thing I hate, is fishing a gravel pit when I don't know it and I can't feel confident punching out my bait into a nice clear area. So you need to look for gravel bars and ask people, if it's new to you, where you fish, where are good spots. Always don't be afraid to ask the tackle shops, fishery bailiffs, that's regular anglers. I'm sure a lot of the time they'll help you out. I quite like this visual aspect that you get watching the bite indication on the top as the rod folds over and the buzzer screams. I mean, let's face it, as fishermen, that must be the ultimate visual turn on. And there is nothing more annoying than if you've got your 2 rods sloping down into the lake there, and a piece of weed gets on the end of the rod top just where it enters the water, and it's just beeping every now and then. Now that's fine during the day, so you can watch it and go, oh, it's a piece of weed. At night, you just don't get any sleep, do you? I mean, I don't sleep at night anyway, I stay awake, but if you are doing that, it's a nightmare, especially on a windy day. Today we have a windy day. So I feel this minimises pieces of weed on the line as well, but more important, I can sit way back here and I'm just looking at a normal level. I'm not craning my neck back up. The rods are up here, and I get that visual aspect of a bite on the rod top. I also get the audible one. So if I do look away, watch a kingfisher, watch somebody else land a fish, whatever, I'm not going to miss it. Normal quiver tipping, you look away and the rod goes boing, springs back, and you know you've missed a fish. This way it's double bubble. Visual with the quiver tip, audible with the buzzers. Sorry, indicators. Now here's another tip. And I used to use this all, well I didn't used to, I use it all the time if I'm barbel or chub fishing or generally river fishing with quiver tips. I have seen people with a rod over here and a rod over there. Double quiver tipping, you know. Well, your eyes can't be in both places at once. I mean, when you're float fishing, you'll see somebody cast a waggler float over here and then they put another float over there. And they're constantly, like Wimbledon tennis, going from one float to the other. And the minute you go here, you look back, there's a blank space. Oh, crikey, I've missed a fish. So with floats, put them both together if you're in one swim. And definitely with quiver tip rods, even if you cast them into two slightly different swims, try and keep the two tips converging together. But also watch out for your reels and make sure that your reels you put those two rod rests in, the sticks, far enough apart that one reel handle doesn't hit the other when it does back wind. So I do the reels first, and then I alter the tips. You can actually, you know, if you can imagine it like this, you can move the reels apart like this at the base, and that converges the tips a little bit. Because if you have two rod tops or two quiver tips there tight together, it's much easier to see one move against the other, and you can see almost infinitesimal bites on them by getting them close together. All you've got to do is remember, when you pick up the strike, pick it up straight, otherwise you'll knock the other one off the rest and you'll have two buzzers, sorry, indicators, going at the same time.
Trapped in space, still living every day in a positive way. I know it's hard.
Well guys, it didn't take long to get that fish, and let's get that camera around the right way, you might be able to see it. This really nice tench, this one. That's with the rod right up high. I've got to keep him out of these trees if I can. It's going to make it. Man, this is a nice tench. You can see the weed up the line there, and that's the idea with that rod high, keeping all your line out of that weed and minimalise it. Don't get it first time. Oh, it's a beauty. It's a, oh, let it come out the net. Let's get it up on the mat. Man alive, this is a nice big tench. This ain't a million miles away from £6. Oh good lord, that is absolutely, I would say, every bit of £5. The hook out, just get yourself one of these little plastics, they're just gorgeous, they're so good. That was a maggot and worm combo, and that, guys, is well worth getting out of bed for. Let's take another look at it.
I know it's hard when I'm gone.
Not needing all that slime, but just let me show you this tench. That's got to be, wow, it's 5.5 of anybody's money. Could be bigger. Let's get it on the scales. I'm going to miss it. Look, I've netted half the lake bed as well. Oh, it's a nice fish. It's sick. 5.14. Shouldn't be disappointed with that, should you? Really, it's a beautiful fish. Take another quick look at it. Honest John, 5.14. Look at that. 2 ounces short of £6.
misbehave. It's only a phase. As time ticks on, things come and go in life, so we have to be strong.
Well, guys, Lee's just come round. The fishery manager here and the bailiff, he's come round. And he must be lucky because I've sat it for hours with my rod stuck up in the air like I told you. I missed one bite while he was here, and as we're talking about carp of all things, it was a screamer, single toner, wasn't it, Lee?
It was.
It was away. Now, I don't know where we're going to get it in to show you, but after getting that nice big tench, it would be nice to show you the method works, and I've got another one. There's just a bush to the right that I don't want it disappearing and burying in there. You can see here even how high I've got these buzzers. It's just a way of getting out of that marginal weed when it drifts in. He's in, 2 species now. Okay, so it's not a monster fish. It's quite a pretty little mirror. And it did give me quite a start where that rod was first going to go out the rest there. There he is. A quick look at him there. It's a pretty fish. Lovely scales on it. Now at least it shows you the method works, not just on tench, but on carp as well.
Things come and go in life, so we have to be strong. Alone